I fidget with my watch as Attorney Whitman arranges his papers, the heavy mahogany table reflecting the overhead lights that feel a touch too bright this morning. Around me, family members murmur in hushed tones. My brother Ethan lounges in his chair across from me, designer suit perfectly pressed, not a hair out of place. The smirk on his face makes my stomach tighten. Shall we begin? Whitman asks, his voice carrying the appropriate gravity for the occasion. I nod, smoothing the fabric of my simple black blazer. Nothing flashy, just practical and professional, like always. It's what Dad would have expected. Dad. The empty chair at the head of the table feels like a presence all its own. Ethan clears his throat, leaning forward with a confidence I recognize all too well. Before we get started, he says, voice carrying to every corner of the room, I just want to say Dad always said the company man gets the company. Several relatives chuckle. Uncle Robert pats Ethan's shoulder. Aunt Martha nods knowingly. I keep my face neutral, the way I've learned to over 12 years of working at Carter and Mason Developments, 12 years of arriving first and leaving last. 12 years of solving problems while Ethan collected the praise. 12 years of being invisible in plain sight. The memories flood back unbidden. Standing on the stage at business school graduation, magna cum laude, scanning the audience for my father's proud face. Finding it, finally, but seeing only polite acknowledgement there. That's nice, honey, he'd said later, before turning to Ethan. Did you tell your sister about your golf score? 3 under par, Chelsea. The club pro says he's never seen such a natural swing. I blink the memory away. That was 10 years ago. What matters is what I've built since then. The projects saved, the clients retained, the profits increased. Like that first major rescue when I was 24, stepping in when the Peterson development was on the brink of collapse. I'd worked through weekends, negotiated with subcontractors personally, revised budgets line by line. All while Ethan was skiing in Aspen Vale, cruising around Croatia, parties in Miami, etc., while I was the one working for this company and my father's legacy. Attorney Whitman adjusts his glasses, drawing me back to the present. Before I continue with the formal reading, I should explain that your father made significant changes to his estate planning in 2018. The room falls silent. Papers slide across the table toward each of us. I take mine without looking, watching instead as Ethan's expression freezes, the smug smile faltering as his eyes dart across the page. I look down at my own document, the legal language, swimming before my eyes, until a single sentence comes into focus. Carter and Mason Developments, in its entirety, was transferred to Chelsea Carter's sole ownership 5 years ago. The air leaves my lungs. This can't be right. As you can see, Whitman continues, his voice steady and clear. Carter and Mason Developments was legally transferred to Chelsea's sole ownership in November of 2018. The company's current valuation stands at $2.8 million, with a growth of 35% under her management during this period. I hear the rustling of papers as relatives frantically flip through their documents. Ethan's face has drained of all color, his mouth opening and closing without sound. There must be some mistake, he finally manages, voice cracking. Dad would never. There's no mistake, Ethan. The calm in my voice surprises even me. Do you remember the Riverfront Plaza project? The $18 million commercial development you were supposed to be handling while you were actually in Vail for 3 weeks? His eyes widen slightly. I found subcontractors ready to walk off the job, permits about to expire, and cost overruns approaching 7 figures. I tap my finger on the document. I spent 6 weeks rebuilding the entire project from the ground up. Dad came to the site one day unannounced. He saw me negotiating with the steel suppliers, reviewing architectural changes, and calming the investors all in one afternoon. The room is utterly silent now. Aunt Martha shifts uncomfortably in her seat. Uncle Robert examines his hands. Cousin James suddenly seems fascinated by the ceiling. I didn't know about this transfer, I admit, meeting Whitman's gaze. Dad never told me. Whitman nods. He was explicit that you were not to be informed until after his passing. He said, and I quote, "Let her keep proving herself without knowing she already owns it. That's the Carter way." A weight lifts from my shoulders, even as a new one settles in its place. All those years of silent work, of pushing forward without recognition, they hadn't gone unnoticed after all. But now the company is truly mine, with all its responsibilities, all its employees, all its future resting in my hands. I look across the table at my brother, whose world has just shifted beneath him, and realize mine has too. The company man didn't get the company after all. The company woman did. But what about the family home? The investments? Ethan interrupts, his voice cracking with desperation. His fingers grip the edge of the mahogany table as if it might keep him from drowning. Attorney Whitman adjusts his glasses, his expression unchanged. The Denver property transfers to Ethan Carter, along with its existing mortgage balance of $250,000. The words hit like stones. I watch Ethan's face transition from confusion to disbelief, to the beginning stages of panic. The mortgage? He repeats, as if the word is foreign to him. But the investments. Dad had that portfolio with Merrill Lynch. Whitman clears his throat. I regret to inform you that the family investments were largely depleted during your father's final illness. The medical costs were substantial. A soft murmur ripples through the room. Uncle Robert shifts uncomfortably. Aunt Martha presses her hand to her throat, her chunky gold bracelet catching the light. So I get a house with a mortgage? Ethan's voice rises an octave. That's it? The realization washes over him visibly. His expected windfall is actually a financial burden. The designer suit suddenly looks like an expensive mistake. But what about Chelsea? Aunt Martha whispers loudly from her corner. Surely George left her something? Uncle Robert waves his hand dismissively. Probably some of Margaret's china. You know how George felt about the business staying with the men in the family. I focus on my breathing, keeping my expression neutral as they discuss me as if I'm not present, the same way they've always done. Ethan straightens his tie, reaching for anything that might salvage his reputation. Well, at least I got the house. Prime Denver real estate. Worth at least $1 million in today's market. His voice carries the forced bravado of a man trying to convince himself as much as everyone else. A small smile appears at the corner of Whitman's mouth. He glances at me with a look I can't quite interpret. We haven't finished yet. The memory surfaces unexpectedly. 3 years ago, the night I saved the Riverfront project. My father calling at 2 a.m. after reviewing the recalculated projections I'd emailed him. I didn't think you had it in you, he'd said, his voice gruff with something I couldn't identify at the time. The contractors are all back on schedule? Yes, I'd answered, exhausted but proud, and I got them to agree to the original price points. A pause on the line, then, I see you now, Chelsea. It was the first time he'd ever said anything like that to me. I'd gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. Across the table, Marjorie Davis, the company bookkeeper who has worked for Carter and Mason for 30 years, catches my eye and nods almost imperceptibly. She knows. She's always known. Whitman reaches beneath the table and produces an ornate wooden box, its surface gleaming with age and polish. He places it carefully in front of me, and to my daughter Chelsea, he reads from the will. I leave my father's collection. Prom. A poorly concealed snicker comes from Uncle Robert's direction. Cousin James smirks. I hear Aunt Martha whisper. Just as we thought. The trinkets. My fingers trace the inlaid pattern on the box lid. I've seen it before, sitting on my father's dresser for as long as I can remember. Always locked, always private. I open it slowly. Nestled on deep blue velvet are rows of vintage watches. Patek Philippe, Rolex, Vacheron Constantin. Each one gleaming, immaculate, perfect. My grandfather's passion. My father's secret pride. 51 pieces in total. Whitman announces, his voice cutting through the sudden silence. Professionally appraised last year at $460,000. The room freezes. Ethan's mouth opens and closes without sound, like a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. That's, he finally splutters, that's not possible. I assure you, it's quite accurate. Whitman responds, sliding a formal appraisal document across the table. Your father was meticulous about maintaining both the collection and its documentation. Aunt Martha, who seconds ago was dismissing my inheritance, now leans forward with renewed interest. Uncle Robert's eyebrows lift toward his receding hairline. So, Chelsea gets the company worth $2.8 million. Ethan says slowly, as if working through a difficult equation. Plus watches worth almost $500,000? I do the mental calculation myself. $2.8 million plus $460,000. A $3.26 million inheritance versus a house with a $250,000 mortgage. The imbalance is staggering. Relatives who moments ago were chuckling at my expense now approach with sudden respect. Uncle Robert clears his throat awkwardly. Always thought you had a good head for business, Chelsea. Ethan pushes back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. His face has flushed an unhealthy red. He leans close as he passes behind my chair. This isn't over, he hisses, his breath hot against my ear. Dad wasn't in his right mind when he changed the will. You know that. Aunt Martha materializes beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder with newfound warmth. My friend Patrick handles estate contests, dear. Just something to consider, given the unusual circumstances. Uncle Robert joins the chorus from across the table. Family should stick together, Chelsea. I'm sure you'll do the right thing and share with your brother. I close the watch box with a definitive click that silences the room. For the first time in my life, I don't feel the need to make myself smaller for their comfort. I worked 80-hour weeks for 12 years. I say, my voice steady and clear. I managed projects Ethan abandoned. I secured clients he alienated. I earned every bit of this. I stand, gathering the documents and the watch box. The weight of it feels right in my arms, substantial, valuable, mine. The family man didn't get the company or the fortune. The family woman did. And for once, I'm not apologizing for it. 3 days later, the fluorescent light in my office flickers, a familiar irritation I've learned to ignore. I straighten the modest wooden nameplate on my desk, Chelsea Carter, Executive Vice President, a title that took 8 years longer to earn than it should have. I trace my finger along the edge of my grandfather's watch, now mine, its weight still unfamiliar on my wrist. 3 days since the will reading, and the office feels different. My office. My company. The phone rings for the 4th time this hour. Chelsea Carter. I answer, my voice steadier than my hands. Chelsea, dear. Aunt Martha's honey-sweet tone carries warning signs. The family is concerned. We really should discuss what's happening with the company. There's nothing to discuss, Aunt Martha. The legal transfer was completed 5 years ago. But surely you understand how this looks? Your father clearly wasn't thinking clearly when he... I have another call. We'll talk soon. I hang up before the familiar rage can color my voice. I swivel my chair toward the window, where construction cranes punctuate the Denver skyline. Each one represents projects I've overseen, clients I've reassured, problems I've solved. The view reminds me of my first day, 12 years ago. Just handle the filing, honey, Dad had said, showing me to a windowless room in the basement. Ethan will show you around when he gets back from his meeting. The meeting turned out to be a 3-hour lunch with Dad's golfing buddies. I spent that first day organizing 6 months of backlogged permits that threatened to shut down 3 active projects. The memory stings less now, knowing what I know. A sharp knock precedes Barbara poking her head in. She's been the office manager since before I was born. Her silver hair and no-nonsense glasses as much a fixture of Carter and Mason as the blueprint table in the conference room. He's here, she says, face tight with warning. And he brought reinforcements. I barely have time to stand before Ethan barges in, followed by Uncle Robert. My brother's designer suit can't hide the anger radiating from him. His face is flushed, hair slightly disheveled, unusual for someone who spends more on grooming products than I do on rent. This ends now, Ethan announces, slamming the door behind them. We need a family meeting to discuss what Dad really wanted. I fold my arms across my chest. What Dad wanted is perfectly clear in the legal documents you received. Documents that will be contested. Uncle Robert steps forward, his bulky frame imposing in my modest office. George wasn't himself in those later years. He was sharp enough to notice who was actually running his company. I reply, surprised by my own calm. Ethan paces, hands gesturing wildly. You've always been his little pet project. Poor Chelsea. So serious, so hardworking. He stops, leaning across my desk. But we both know you manipulated him, getting him alone when he was vulnerable after Mom died. The accusation lands like a physical blow. I think of nights spent sleeping on the office couch, of the Peterson project that nearly bankrupted us, of how close we came to losing everything because of Ethan's negligence. You want to talk about manipulation? I open my desk drawer slowly. Let's discuss the Peterson development. Ethan's expression flickers, uncertainty crossing his face. $18 million, Ethan. Our largest contract ever. I pull out a thick folder. You were supposedly managing it while Dad recovered from his heart surgery. Ancient history, he dismisses with a wave. 3 years ago isn't ancient. Not when I found subcontractors threatening to walk because they hadn't been paid in 6 weeks. Not when permits were expired. Not when cost overruns were approaching 7 figures. I opened the folder. And certainly not when I discovered where some of that money went. Uncle Robert shifts uncomfortably. We're not here to dredge up old business disputes. Really? Because I have the bank records showing $215,000 transferred to Ethan's personal account during that period. I slide the statement across the desk. Money earmarked for the steel supplier who nearly put a lien on the property. Ethan's face drains of color. Dad approved those transfers. For business development. At a ski resort? I push another document forward. With your girlfriend at the time? That's an interesting business strategy. The room falls silent. Outside my window, Denver continues its busy rhythm, oblivious to our family drama. I think about the darkest moment, 3 years ago, when I discovered the depth of Ethan's betrayal. I'd been working through the night, calling in favors from every contact I had, renegotiating with suppliers who'd been burned by delayed payments. Dad had initially blamed me when the project first showed trouble signs. I put Ethan in charge for a reason, Chelsea. Stop interfering. But then he'd shown up unannounced at the site one afternoon. Found me in a hard hat and work boots, going over revised blueprints with the foreman, calming nervous investors on my cell phone while simultaneously negotiating with the city inspector. Dad had stood silently watching for nearly an hour before approaching. I didn't know, was all he'd said. A week later, he'd given me full authority over the project. 2 months after that, I discovered the ownership transfer documents in the company safe. He'd never mentioned them, never acknowledged what he'd done. Just watched me continue to work, continue to prove myself, day after day, while Ethan collected praise for turning the project around. I found something else last night, I say, pulling out one final folder, in Dad's home office. Ethan and Uncle Robert exchange glances, his private notes. I open the folder carefully, about the company, about us. The handwritten pages reveal a different George Carter than the one I thought I knew. Meticulous observations about projects, personnel, and his children. I read aloud. Chelsea salvaged the Peterson contract. Maybe I've been backing the wrong horse all these years. Uncle Robert clears his throat. Your father always had a flair for dramatic language. The transfer documents are dated 1 week after that note. I close the folder. Along with this. I slide a single piece of paper across the desk. A handwritten note in my father's distinctive script. You earned this, Chelsea. A knock at the door interrupts before Ethan can respond. Tom Mackenzie, our senior project manager, enters with coffee and an unmistakably protective stance. Sorry to interrupt, miss. Carter, but we have that meeting in 5 minutes. He sets a coffee on my desk. Just wanted to make sure you had time to prepare. Ethan glares at Tom, who returns the look with steady indifference. Tom has been with the company for 20 years, has seen everything. She was here every Saturday while you were in Aspen. Tom says quietly to Ethan. Every Sunday too. Some of us noticed, even if your father didn't seem to. Barbara appears in the doorway again. Miss Carter, the Wallace Group is online too. They're expressing relief that you're still at the helm. The office falls into an awkward silence, as my support network makes itself visible. People who've watched me work, who've seen the reality behind the family facade. Ethan straightens his tie, attempting to regain composure. This isn't over. We'll be back, with our attorney. I look forward to it, I reply, surprising myself with the truth in those words. After they leave, I sink back into my chair, the weight of the confrontation settling on my shoulders. The phone rings again. Another relative calling to express concern. I let it go to voicemail, instead opening my laptop to the email that just arrived from our biggest client. Chelsea, heard about your father. Glad to know you're officially in charge now. We always knew who really ran things. For the first time in 12 years, I don't have to hide my smile when I reply. The next morning, Ethan returns as promised. This time with an attorney, a nervous man with thinning hair and a leather briefcase that looks more expensive than its contents deserve. We're contesting the will, Ethan announces without preamble. Dad wasn't of sound mind when he made these changes. I nod, having expected this move. I understand. And I have 3 years of financial records showing your contributions to this company. I gesture to the chair. Would you like to review them before you file? The attorney shifts uncomfortably. Perhaps we should see these records. I slide a USB drive across the desk. Everything's here. Attendance records, project outcomes, financial transactions. I meet Ethan's eyes directly, including those from personal accounts. The attorney plugs the drive into his laptop. His eyebrows rise steadily as he scrolls through the files. "Mr. Carter," he says after several minutes, "I think we should discuss this in private." Ethan's face reddens. "There's nothing to discuss. She manipulated our father." "What I did," I say, standing up, "was save this company, repeatedly, while you treated it like your personal ATM." I walk to the door and open it. "I've earned every bit of this, Ethan. Not through manipulation, but through work you couldn't be bothered to do." The attorney closes his laptop. "Miss Carter, perhaps we could discuss some kind of settlement?" "There's nothing to settle," I reply. "But I'll give you both some time to review those records. They tell quite a story." After they leave, I stand at my window watching the Denver traffic below. I wonder if anyone else has had to stand their ground against someone who underestimated them so thoroughly for so long. The thought brings unexpected strength. My phone vibrates with a text from Barbara. "Your 2 appointment is here, and Ethan's lawyer just left. Alone." I straighten my jacket, adjust my grandfather's watch on my wrist, and prepare to step into the meeting. For the first time, I'll introduce myself as Chelsea Carter, President and CEO. I straighten the gold nameplate on my office door that now proudly displays President beneath my name. The morning light catches the engraving, sending a small flash across the hallway. 3 weeks have passed since the will reading, and each day has brought a fresh attack from Ethan and his supporters. My desk phone chirps. "Miss Carter, your 10 o'clock is here. The Weber Group representatives." "Send them in, Diane." I smooth my burgundy blazer and take a deep breath. The Weber Group nearly pulled their contract when they heard rumors that Ethan might take over. Now they're back to discuss expanding their sustainable housing development. The glass door swings open, and Roger Weber extends his hand. "Chelsea, wonderful to see you still at the helm." "The company's in better hands than ever," I reply, gesturing toward the conference table where blueprints await. An hour later, Roger signs the contract for an expanded green housing initiative that will increase their original development by 30%. "Your father would be proud," he says, capping his pen. "Thank you, but I'm not doing this for my father anymore." The words surprise even me with their certainty. After they leave, I notice a Denver Business Journal email requesting an interview about women changing the landscape of Colorado construction. 5 years ago, I would have forwarded it to the PR department with instructions to decline. Today, I accept. The afternoon brings Diane to my doorway again. "Your brother posted something you might want to see." I pull up Ethan's social media profile to find a lengthy post claiming I manipulated our ailing father into changing his will. The comments section overflows with sympathy from country club acquaintances who've never set foot on a construction site. My phone buzzes with a text from Aunt Martha. "Family concerned about company direction. Perhaps we should discuss." "Purdy my business, Sid." I set the phone screen down on my desk and return to reviewing quarterly projections when my email pings with a message from Uncle Robert. Subject line: "Concerns for the family business." The final blow arrives at 4 o'clock, a legal letter demanding equitable financial compensation for Ethan based on years of contribution to company growth. I draft a simple press statement by 6, carefully referencing how the company has grown 35% under my management and detailing our commitment to sustainable development. I quote my father's written assessment of my leadership abilities, previously private but now necessary ammunition. By morning, 3 business partners have sent public testimonials supporting my leadership. Carter and Mason's reputation for integrity has only strengthened under Chelsea's direction, writes our largest investor. 2 former clients call to inquire about returning to our roster now that the company's future is secure. The Community Development Board nominates our latest project for an Environmental Innovation Award. A week passes. I'm reviewing staffing projections when Diane knocks softly. "You might want to see this," she says, handing me a real estate listing. The family home Ethan's inheritance is now for sale. The listing description mentions motivated seller and price to move quickly. Later, Tom from project management stops by my office. "My wife's cousin works at that real estate agency handling your family home. Says Ethan's agent told potential buyers the market isn't what it once was when they questioned the below-market price." The Denver Business Journal arrives the following Wednesday with our company featured prominently. Carter and Mason leads green building revolution. I place it on my desk beside the blueprint for our newest development. My phone lights up with a message from cousin James, who loudly supported Ethan at the will reading. Hey Chelsea, long time. Thought we might catch up over coffee sometime? I'm leaving the office that evening when I spot Ethan's distinctive red sports car parked outside the Northside Employment Agency. The sight stops me cold. The brother who once claimed he was born to run Carter and Mason is now looking for work. Uncle Robert calls the next morning. Chelsea, about Ethan. The boy might need some guidance. Perhaps there's a position. I'm not hiring, Uncle Robert. Aunt Martha leaves a voicemail an hour later asking how the watch collection is doing and whether I'd considered having the pieces properly appraised. From my office window, I can just make out the for sale sign on the family home's lawn, a small red rectangle in the distance. I call my attorney that afternoon. I need you to document every communication, every post, every legal threat. I want it all on record. He agrees, then asks, and the expansion plans? Are we moving forward? Absolutely. I examine the blueprint for our new headquarters. We break ground next month. That evening, I sign papers on a modest but elegant home in a quiet neighborhood. The mortgage-free status feels like armor against whatever comes next. The realtor hands me the keys. Congratulations. Most people your age are still struggling with down payments. I smile, thinking of the watches secured in a climate-controlled vault, and the company that grows stronger each day. I've earned every inch of this. I spot Ethan through the glass wall of my reception area before Barbara can announce him. 3 months since the will reading, and the change is stark. His once immaculate appearance has deteriorated, wrinkled shirt untucked at one corner, hair lacking its usual precise styling. I straighten the papers on my desk and take a steadying breath. Miss Carter, your brother is here. He doesn't have an appointment, Barbara says through the intercom, her tone carrying a protective edge. Send him in, I reply, adjusting my grandfather's watch on my wrist. The weight of it reminds me how much has changed. Ethan enters with a practiced smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Chelsea, he says, voice warm with rehearsed sincerity. The new office looks great. Very executive. I gesture toward the chair across from my desk. What brings you by, Ethan? He settles into the seat, leaning forward with hands clasped. I've been doing a lot of thinking about Dad, about what he would want for us, for the company. I remain silent, letting him fill the space. Look, I know things got heated after the will reading. He adjusts his position, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from his pants. But we're family. Carter and Mason has always been a family business. We should be running this together. The audacity nearly makes me laugh. Instead, I keep my expression neutral, the same mask I've worn through countless meetings where men twice my age underestimated me. The housing market is terrible right now. He continues when I don't immediately respond. I can't sell the house for what it's worth. The mortgage is killing me. That sounds challenging, I say, my voice even. His expression shifts, a flash of irritation breaking through the facade. I'm being cut off from my birthright, Chelsea. The Carter name is on this building because of our father and grandfather. What do you think it does to our reputation when people hear about this family dispute? I notice the subtle threat wrapped in concern. Classic Ethan. I'm willing to forgive the past. He says, magnanimous now. We need to move forward. You need an executive vice president, someone with connections, someone who understands the Carter vision. I see. I open my desk drawer and withdraw a manila folder I've kept prepared for this very moment. Would you mind if I shared something with you first? Confusion flickers across his face, but he nods, assuming this is negotiation. I slide the folder across the desk. This contains documentation spanning the last 6 years at Carter and Mason. Ethan flips it open, frowning at the first page, a timeline meticulously crafted by Barbara, showing every major company crisis alongside Ethan's documented absences. Page 2 shows the Peterson development timeline. You'll note you were scheduled as project lead, but flight records confirm you were in Vail from January 3rd through January 28th that year. The project nearly collapsed. His jaw tightens. That was one project. Page 3. I continue calmly. The Westridge Commercial Complex. You reported attending all meetings with the Zoning Commission, yet records show your credit card was used at restaurants in Miami during those dates. I turn to page 4 myself. This spreadsheet tracks company performance quarter by quarter since I took full control. Revenue up 35%. Client retention improved 22%. Employee turnover reduced by half. Numbers can be manipulated, he mutters. Page 5 might interest you. I tap the document. Photos from your Instagram. Skiing in Switzerland during the Hartman crisis. Yachting off Croatia, when we nearly lost the Madison account. Golfing in Scotland, when 3 subcontractors threatened to walk. His face reddens. You've been building a case against me. I've been documenting reality, Ethan, something you've always had trouble facing. I turn to the final page. Dad's notes from his private journal, dated 2 weeks before he transferred ownership. Also, after he transferred the ownership. His concerns about your business acumen are quite specific. Ethan slams the folder shut. This is just Dad being Dad. Always critical, never satisfied. He changed his mind about me, I say quietly. He could have changed his mind about you too, if you'd given him reason. So what now? Ethan asks, voice taut. You've made your point. You want me to beg? I close the folder and return it to my drawer. I'm sorry, Ethan. We're not hiring. He stares at me, momentarily speechless. We shared a childhood. I continue. But we chose different paths as adults. I chose this company. You chose other priorities. Chelsea. I can recommend a financial advisor who might help with your current situation. One consultation, my treat. But the company is no longer a family discussion. His controlled facade crumbles completely. What am I supposed to do? He asks, voice cracking. I never thought I'd actually need to work. The raw admission hangs between us, perhaps the first honest thing he's said in years. That's something you'll need to figure out, I reply, standing to signal the end of our meeting. Ethan rises slowly, defeat visible in the slump of his shoulders. He walks to the door, pauses as if to say something more, then continues out through reception. Through the glass, I watch the staff's subtle reactions, eyes following him, then turning toward my office with quiet nods of respect. No one says a word as I walk to my window and look out at the Denver skyline. The company I rebuilt, the legacy I earned, the future I'll shape. Barbara clears her throat from the doorway. Your 3 o'clock is here. I turn from the window. Send them in. The past can stay where it belongs. I have work to do. When have you had to make a difficult decision that was right for you, even when others disagreed? Share your story in the comments. I pause in the doorway of my expanded executive suite, savoring the morning light as it spills across the polished surface of my grandfather's Patek Philippe on my wrist. 6 months since the will reading, and sometimes I still expect to wake up back at my cramped desk in the corner office. The Denver Business Journal cover hangs framed on the wall opposite my desk. Carter and Mason leads Denver's sustainable building revolution. My photo, not Ethan's, smiles back at me with quiet confidence. The company logo beneath the headline incorporates both my grandfather's original drafting compass and a modern solar panel silhouette honoring our roots while embracing our future. Miss Carter? My assistant Sarah appears at the door. Your 9 o'clock is here. The Women in Business Mentorship candidates. I smile. Send them in. And Sarah, make sure we have enough application packets for everyone. 5 young women file into my conference room, eyes wide as they take in the certificates and awards that now line the walls. I remember being their age, desperate for guidance that never came. Welcome to Carter and Mason Developments. I begin. This mentorship program is designed to give you what I never had: a path forward in an industry that doesn't always make room for women at the table. Later that afternoon, I visit the accountant to finalize the details for the business scholarship I've established in my father's name at my alma mater. The irony doesn't escape me, honoring the man who rarely honored my accomplishments. Yet something about it feels right, like closing a circle. The first recipient will be selected next fall. The university representative confirms. Thank you. I sign the final document, my grandfather's watch catching the light. Make sure the selection committee understands merit matters more than connections. When I return to the office, there's a message from Aunt Martha. Our relationship remains tentative: a monthly lunch, careful conversations about weather and health. Today's voicemail suggests progress. Chelsea dear, I wondered if you might help Robert and me with some renovation plans. You always did have the best eye for detail. I smile slightly as I delete the message. The same aunt who once whispered that I'd probably get the china now seeks my professional opinion. I'll help them, of course. Some relationships can be rebuilt, if not fully restored. Others remain beyond repair. Ethan and I haven't spoken since that final confrontation in my office. I heard through the grapevine he's selling luxury cars now, actually working for a living. According to Tom, who bought a new sedan last month, Ethan's actually good at it. Turns out charm and confidence have their uses when backed by actual effort. The afternoon sun warms my office as I review the quarterly reports. Another record season, with 3 new sustainable developments breaking ground next month. The parking garage contract, the one Dad always insisted was impossible without compromising quality, sits signed and executed on my desk. We found a way after all. When the office empties for the day, I drive to Riverside Cemetery. The groundskeeper nods as I pass, familiar with my monthly visits now. "I did it, Dad," I say to the granite headstone. Not how either of us expected. The wind rustles through nearby trees, the only answer I'll ever receive. It's enough. Back at home, I change into comfortable clothes and pour a glass of wine. On my coffee table sits the appraiser's report for the watch collection. I've donated the most valuable piece, a rare 1,940 seconds chronograph, to the Business School Museum. It felt right to share a piece of my inheritance with future generations of entrepreneurs. My phone buzzes with a text from the Denver Post reporter. Quote, "Approved. Thank you for the interview." I smile, remembering my words. Success isn't about what you inherit, but what you build. 6 months ago, those would have been empty platitudes. Now they're the foundation of my life. The sunset paints Denver's skyline in amber and gold outside my window. I trace the inscription inside my grandfather's watch. Time reveals truth. How right he was. Tomorrow brings new challenges: the expansion into neighboring counties, the sustainability initiative, the contractor negotiations. But tonight, I simply stand at the window, watching darkness settle over the city that's finally beginning to recognize the company woman who built something lasting. I turn off the light, leaving yesterday's shadows behind me,